17 July 1943, 8:30 in the morning. Fields west of the village of Butovo, southern sector of the Kursk battlefield. The engines of the Tiger tanks of Heavy Panzer Battalion 505 had already been running for 20 minutes. Each machine weighed more than 56 tons. Their Maybach HL 210 engines produced 650 horsepower, but the sound was less a roar and more a deep mechanical grinding, like a factory beginning its work. Inside Tiger No. 321, Lieutenant Karl Weber, platoon commander of 1st Company, checked the sight alignment of the 80 8mm KWK-36 gun. The weapon had been developed from the famous German anti-aircraft gun. On the open battlefield, it could penetrate the armor of a Soviet T-34 from well over 1,000 yards. The Tiger carried 92 rounds. Most were armor-piercing. Weber knew the value of each one. At 8:42 in the morning, the battalion radio network came alive. The voice of Major Hans von Rosen, commander of Heavy Panzer Battalion 505, cut through the static. All companies advance on phase line Adler. Infantry of the 198th Infantry Division will follow. The operational objective was clear: break the Soviet defensive belt south of Kursk. The German High Command had launched Operation Citadel 2 weeks earlier, an attempt to eliminate the massive Soviet salient that bulged westward around the city of Kursk. The plan depended on powerful armored thrusts from north and south. Heavy Tiger tanks were the spearhead. The battalion fielded 45 operational Tigers that morning. They advanced in 3 companies, each supported by Panzer Grenadier Infantry riding SDKFZ 251 half-tracks. At 8:47 in the morning, the column began to move. Tracks clanked against packed earth roads. Dust clouds rose behind the heavy machines. The terrain ahead looked calm. That appearance was deceptive. Soviet engineers had spent months preparing defensive belts. Minefields stretched across the fields in irregular patterns. Anti-tank guns waited in concealed firing pits. At 9:12 in the morning, Tiger No. 321 halted. Through the periscope, Weber saw the reason. A Soviet T-34 had appeared on a ridge 800 yards away. The Soviet tank fired first. The 76mm shell struck the front armor of Tiger No. 324. The impact produced a flash and a metallic crack, but the 80mm frontal armor of the Tiger absorbed the blow. The shell shattered without penetrating. Inside his turret, Weber gave the command, "Fire!" The 88mm gun fired with a heavy recoil. The armor-piercing shell crossed the distance in less than a second. The Soviet tank erupted in smoke. 2 more T-34 tanks appeared behind the ridge. Within the next 4 minutes, the Tigers destroyed both. This was the reason German armored commanders valued the Tiger so highly. Range, armor protection, firepower. Against most Allied tanks of 1943, the Tiger held a decisive advantage. But mechanical strength alone did not guarantee victory. At 9:25 in the morning, the first mine exploded beneath Tiger No. 318. The blast tore off the left track. The heavy vehicle lurched sideways and stopped. Minefields were the first defensive belt. More explosions followed. Within 10 minutes, 4 Tigers had been immobilized by mines. German engineers moved forward under covering fire, probing the ground with steel rods. Every delay mattered. The entire operational plan of Operation Citadel depended on speed. German armored forces had to punch through the defensive belts before Soviet reserves arrived. By 10:15 in the morning, the battalion had cleared the minefield and continued forward. Another group of Soviet tanks appeared near a tree line, roughly 1,000 yards ahead. 8 T-34 tanks advanced in line formation. The Tigers halted and opened fire. At that distance, the 88mm gun was devastating. Within 7 minutes, 6 Soviet tanks burned across the field. The remaining 2 withdrew behind smoke. From a tactical perspective, the engagement confirmed the strength of the Tiger tank. Yet a different threat was already forming above the battlefield. High above the clouds, Allied reconnaissance aircraft had begun tracking German armored movements across the Eastern Front. Air power had become an increasingly decisive factor in modern warfare. Earlier in the war, German armored units often moved without serious interference from enemy aircraft. That situation was changing rapidly. Factories in the United States and Britain were producing fighter bombers in enormous numbers. Aircraft such as the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt and the Hawker Typhoon were designed specifically to hunt armored vehicles. Their pilots studied German tank formations the same way artillery officers studied enemy maps. And once Allied air forces gained control of the skies, even the most heavily armored vehicle on the ground could become a target. Back on the battlefield near Butovo, Weber watched another Soviet tank withdraw behind a smokescreen. The Tigers had destroyed 11 tanks since the morning advance began. The battalion had lost none to enemy fire. From the ground, the Tiger still appeared unstoppable, but far above the battlefield, engines were already approaching, and the crews inside the heavy German tanks had not yet realized that the greatest threat to their armor was no longer coming from the ground. 17 July 1943, 11:23 in the morning. The Tiger tanks of Heavy Panzer Battalion 505 had pushed nearly 3 miles beyond the first Soviet defensive belt south of Kursk. The battlefield looked different now. Burning wrecks of Soviet T-34 tanks marked the earlier engagement lines. German armored vehicles continued moving east in staggered formation. Each Tiger maintained roughly 100 yards of spacing from the next vehicle to avoid presenting a concentrated target. Inside Tiger number 321, Lieutenant Karl Weber scanned the horizon through the turret optics. Visibility was good. Clear sky, no aircraft, for the moment. At 11:28 in the morning, a warning arrived over the battalion radio network. The voice belonged to a Luftwaffe forward air observer attached to the 11th Panzer Division reconnaissance detachment. Enemy aircraft approaching from southwest, estimated 12 fighters. Inside the German armored formation, several tank commanders turned their periscopes upward instinctively. The Tigers possessed formidable armor against ground fire, but their upper surfaces told a different story. The roof of a Tiger turret measured roughly 25 millimeters thick. The engine deck armor measured even less. Aircraft cannons and rockets were capable of penetrating those areas. At 11:31 in the morning, the first aircraft appeared. They came in low, fast. 12 Republic P-47 Thunderbolt fighter bombers from the 56th Fighter Group of the United States Army Air Forces. Each aircraft carried a heavy payload. 8 5-inch high velocity rockets mounted beneath the wings, 8 12.7 millimeter machine guns in the nose. The Thunderbolt weighed more than 7 tons and was powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 radial engine producing 2,000 horsepower. It had been designed to survive heavy ground fire. More importantly, it had been designed to attack armored targets. The Thunderbolt pilots had already received the target coordinates from Allied reconnaissance aircraft. German armor moving in open terrain, exactly the kind of opportunity Allied air doctrine aimed to exploit. At 11:33 in the morning, the first attack run began. 4 Thunderbolts descended in a shallow dive. Their speed approached 400 miles per hour. From the ground, the sound arrived before the aircraft were visible, a deep mechanical howl from the massive engines. Inside Tiger number 321, Weber heard the warning from another tank commander over the radio. Aircraft incoming, take cover. But there was almost no cover. The terrain consisted of open farmland. No forests, no large buildings, only fields. At 11:34 in the morning, the Thunderbolts fired their rockets. 32 rockets streaked downward. The weapons carried 60-pound high explosive warheads designed to penetrate armor or detonate against engine compartments. The first rocket struck near Tiger number 316. The explosion blasted dirt and metal fragments across the formation. A second rocket struck the rear deck of Tiger number 318. The engine compartment erupted in flames. The blast did not destroy the tank instantly, but the fire quickly spread through the ventilation grills. Inside the vehicle, the crew attempted emergency shutdown procedures. Within seconds, smoke filled the interior. The crew abandoned the tank. Above them, the Thunderbolts pulled upward sharply, climbing to regain altitude. Then the machine guns opened fire. Streams of 12.7 millimeter bullets tore across the German column. The rounds did not always penetrate heavy armor, but they shattered optics, damaged radio antennas, and forced exposed infantry to scatter. The attack lasted less than 2 minutes, but the impact on the armored formation was immediate. 3 Tigers were burning. 2 more had suffered damaged tracks from near explosions. The battalion halted while crews assessed damage. From a strategic perspective, the situation revealed a growing weakness in German armored doctrine. Tiger tanks had been designed for ground combat dominance. They were not designed to operate under constant air attack. Earlier in the war, German armored units often moved with reliable Luftwaffe fighter cover. By 1943, the situation had changed dramatically. German aircraft production could not match the growing industrial output of the United States and Britain. Factories across North America were producing thousands of aircraft every month. Air superiority was gradually shifting toward the Allies, and once Allied aircraft controlled the skies, armored vehicles on the ground became increasingly exposed during movement. At 11:42 in the morning, the Thunderbolts returned. The second wave consisted of 8 aircraft. This time, the pilots approached from the north. German crews attempted evasive movement, but the Tigers were slow machines. Maximum road speed reached roughly 24 miles per hour under ideal conditions. Across rough farmland, their speed dropped much lower. The Thunderbolts dove again. Rockets streaked toward the German column. 1 rocket struck near Tiger number 324. The explosion damaged the right track and forced the tank to stop. Another rocket struck the ground beneath a half-track, carrying Panzer Grenadiers of the 9th Company, 198th Infantry Division. The vehicle overturned. Infantry scattered into nearby drainage ditches. Above the battlefield, the Thunderbolts climbed once more. The attack had lasted less than 5 minutes. Yet the armored advance had completely halted. 4 Tigers were destroyed. 3 were immobilized. The rest of the battalion waited uncertainly in open terrain. For the first time that morning, the crews inside the massive German tanks understood something unsettling. The armor that protected them from enemy tanks could not protect them from the sky, and the aircraft circling above were only the beginning, because another Allied weapon designed specifically to hunt German armor was already approaching the battlefield. 17 July, 1943, 12:12 in the afternoon. The battlefield south of Kursk had gone quiet for several minutes after the second attack by the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt aircraft. The Tiger tanks of Heavy Panzer Battalion 505 remained spread across open farmland west of Butovo. Several vehicles burned slowly. Thick columns of black smoke drifted across the fields. Inside Tiger number 321, Lieutenant Karl Weber listened carefully to the battalion radio network. Damage reports came in one after another. Tiger number 318 destroyed by engine fire. Tiger number 316 abandoned after rocket impact. Tiger number 324 immobilized with track damage. Tiger number 327 unable to move after mine damage from the earlier advance. The battalion had begun the morning with 45 operational Tiger tanks. Now fewer than 30 remained capable of immediate movement. For a formation designed to deliver concentrated armored shock, that reduction mattered. The operational objective of the German advance had not changed: break through the Soviet defensive belts, reach open terrain, force the Red Army to commit reserves prematurely. But each delay allowed Soviet command to reorganize defensive lines farther east. And every minute the Tigers remained exposed increased the risk of another air attack. At 12:16 in the afternoon, a different sound approached from the west, lower pitched, faster. The silhouette of the aircraft was unmistakable. 4 Hawker Typhoon fighter bombers of No. 181 Squadron of the Royal Air Force. The Typhoon had become one of the most feared ground attack aircraft of the war. It carried 4 20mm Hispano cannons in the wings. More importantly, it carried 8 RP-3 rockets mounted beneath the wings. Each rocket carried a 60-pound high explosive warhead capable of penetrating heavy armor if it struck vulnerable surfaces. The Typhoon pilots had been trained extensively to attack armored formations during movement. Their target selection focused on engine decks, turret roofs, and the rear sections of tanks, the areas where armor protection was weakest. At 12:18 in the afternoon, the Typhoons began their attack run. They approached in a shallow dive from roughly 4,000 feet. Inside the Tiger formation, engines started again. Major Hans von Rosen issued a rapid command over the radio network. All vehicles disperse immediately. Maximum movement. German armored doctrine had begun adapting to air threats by this point in the war. Spacing between vehicles could reduce the chance of multiple tanks being hit by a single rocket strike. But dispersion also weakened the concentrated firepower of the formation. The Tigers began moving in different directions across the fields. Heavy tracks crushed wheat and dirt beneath their weight. The Typhoons descended rapidly. At 12:19 in the afternoon, the rockets fired. 8 aircraft would normally fire 64 rockets. This attack involved only 4 Typhoons. 32 rockets streaked downward. 1 rocket struck directly behind Tiger number 329. The explosion tore open the rear engine deck. Fragments pierced the cooling system. The tank stopped almost instantly. Another rocket struck near Tiger number 331. The blast did not penetrate the armor, but destroyed the external fuel drums mounted on the rear hull. Flames spread quickly across the engine compartment. The crew evacuated within seconds. The Typhoons then switched to cannon fire. 4 20mm cannons from each aircraft sent streams of shells across the battlefield. The cannons were not designed to penetrate the thick frontal armor of a Tiger tank, but they could destroy lighter support vehicles. 2 SDKFZ 251 half-tracks carrying infantry of the 198th Infantry Division were hit during the strafing run. Both vehicles caught fire. The Typhoons climbed away and turned east. The attack had lasted less than 90 seconds. Yet the consequences extended far beyond the immediate damage. 6 Tiger tanks were now destroyed or abandoned. 4 more remained immobilized. Less than half of the battalion retained full combat mobility. From a tactical standpoint, the Tiger tank remained one of the most powerful armored vehicles on the ground. Its 88mm gun still outranged most enemy tanks. Its armor still resisted direct hits from many Soviet guns. But the battlefield itself had changed. Air superiority had become a decisive factor. Allied fighter bombers could observe armored movements from miles away. They could attack supply columns, fuel trucks, and repair units. And even when rockets did not penetrate armor, the constant threat forced armored formations to disperse, halt, or move cautiously. That disruption alone slowed operational momentum. In large-scale offensives, such as Operation Citadel, speed and coordination determined success. German armored thrusts needed to break through Soviet defenses quickly before massive Red Army reserves could respond. Every destroyed tank mattered. Every hour of delay mattered. The Tigers had dominated the ground battle that morning. They had destroyed more than a dozen Soviet tanks with minimal direct losses. Yet the sky had introduced a new battlefield dimension, one that armor alone could not control. By late afternoon, Major Hans von Rosen received new orders from higher command. The battalion was to halt further advance and regroup behind the current line. Fuel shortages, mechanical failures, mine damage, and air attacks had reduced the striking power of the formation. The offensive momentum had slowed. Across the broader front, similar reports were arriving from multiple German armored units. Aircraft were attacking roads, bridges, and armored columns. The Tiger tank had been designed to dominate enemy armor, but modern warfare had evolved beyond tank against tank combat. Industrial production, air superiority, and combined arms coordination were reshaping the battlefield, and by the final years of the war, the outcome would increasingly depend not on the strength of individual machines, but on control of the sky above them.